Hello and welcome to DCTV's Primaries edition of Candidate Conversations. I'm Michele McCray, Member Services Coordinator here at DCTV. Today I'll be speaking with your candidates for delegate to the House of Representatives, Mayor, City Council Chair, and other City Council hopefuls from Wards 1, 3, and 5. As a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization, DCTV will ask each candidate the same questions. We will allow about 5 minutes per response. Here are the candidates for Mayor of the District of Columbia. We now have James Butler with us, running for the office of Mayor of Washington, D.C. Hello, James.
Hi, Michelle. How are you this afternoon?
I'm fine. Thank you for asking.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, we're glad to have you. So let's get started. As in every other city in the country, the coronavirus closed schools, shut down businesses, and affected and killed thousands of people. What are your plans for addressing the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic?
Thanks for the question, Michelle. Let me also say to all of our viewers, it is a distinct privilege, pleasure, and an honor to be here today with you and to share my vision on a broad variety of topics. We know that any leader today has to be concerned and intimately concerned with the COVID-19 virus. It doesn't look like it's going to go anywhere anytime soon. So any leader must be prepared to work our everyday lives around COVID-19 so that we can ensure that businesses remain open, the city is moving, but at the same time, we are thriving as a city while still being cognizant that the virus exists. I believe a short time ago, that news was released that the Vice President of the United States has been afflicted with the virus, and my thoughts and prayers are with her at this moment. So by that way of that example, we know that the virus does not discriminate against anyone, no matter their title, no matter their prestige. And as mayor of this great city, one of my first priorities will be to address this virus in a way that's consistent with what science would want us to do. And that is follow the science. It's extremely important that any leader follows the science here. My plans, in addition to following the science, will be to ensure that we as a city can continue to move around and work around the virus in our everyday lives to ensure that we're not fettered with a shutdown once again. We know economically, the city was affected in a very, very negative way by the virus. The country was, and certainly the world was affected. So I think any good leader will look for ways that he or she can work around and continue to keep the city open. What that requires, for example, in our schools is an approach, a thoughtful, planned approach to make sure that if we are bringing students back to school and we have them in class, that we must ensure that our HVAC systems are installed with HEPA systems. So that way, any of those particulates that are viral related, those viral particulates are intercepted before they cause the spread of disease. We also must ensure that our teachers remain safe, that we're not putting our ego in the place of common sense. When it's time for teachers or if the virus is festering among teachers, we must ensure that those teachers are placed in a safe way. We will do that by having adequate substitute teachers available so that if our teachers become sick, and it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, and good leaders will have a plan in place for when this happens. So having an adequate number of substitute teachers ready, having a HEPA system that's really robust and will intercept viral particulates. We will work with some of the engineers that have developed systems for the airlines. So we know that this will be successful and keep people out of harm's way as much as possible. But I know not only view our schools as needing this, I believe that every public agency in DC, we all know, and you know, Michelle, that most of DC government workers are bad. So what that requires that we keep them safe and also out of harm's way. As mayor of this city, I will ensure that our systems are upgraded in all DC-owned buildings and that restaurants, where needed, will comply with that. That we expand the outdoor space for eating so that restaurants are not relegated to shutting down once again. So we will move for a quick permits to be given for restaurants that need to expand their outdoor space. We will ensure that we work with our federal partners to ensure that there's aid and grants also for these businesses where they need outdoor heating and those things of that sort. We will make DC one of the safest cities in America during this virus.
Thank you for that, James. Now, our next question is involving DC statehood. Do you support DC statehood?
I do support DC statehood. I do not support the way we've been going about trying to obtain DC statehood, and I can explain more.
So what do you think would be the most effective next steps towards achieving statehood, and what's your plan for taking those steps?
A pragmatic approach, Michelle, would be to convince those two senators, Manchin and Semina, to work with their colleagues to abolish the filibuster. That would be the ideal way. But one, we don't have a president right now that has really fully said that he would support a 100% abolition of the filibuster. So, I mean, how can we expect these two members of the Senate to go along with their colleagues when our president, unfortunately, isn't fully on board with it? And I don't want my words to be misconstrued as not being supportive of our president. I am a diehard Democrat and I do support and stand behind President Biden, but I believe he's wrong with regards to abolition of the filibuster. I believe we should take an aggressive approach and abolish the filibuster. And I believe Manchin and Semina are both wrong and have hurt their parties. That said, that's the pragmatic approach that I would take and what I'd like to see. We know that's not working. So the approach that I believe we should take is to try, instead of saying we want to be the 51st state, we should venue shop for another jurisdiction that may lean Republican, and maybe it's Guam. I don't know, but we have started, as my campaign have started to explore venues in the world that we would look at. Puerto Rico, I know, has a desire among some Puerto Ricans to become the 52nd or 51st state. But I think short of doing it as a package deal and offering the other side of the aisle something that they can really say, this is not going to change the balance of Congress, we're not going to get it. So we've been running it up the middle year after year, probably for the last 25 years, thinking it's going to work. But honestly, this has been a PR stunt in many respects because you can get all the support in the House you want. But the reality is we are no further with DC statehood than we were 25, 30 years ago. We're really not. So what I proffer to all of the voters is that you need someone that's not a career politician. I think these career politicians' visions are stifled about the possibilities after spending so much time. All three of my opponents have spent their entire careers as career politicians, and I believe their visions are stifled. I know, as many people watching this will say, bureaucrats and career politicians, they learn how to tell you no. I will be a mayor that learns how to take an unconventional, out-of-the-box approach and tell the people what we can do to make DC the 51st state. I always end every speech or debate or every forum with God bless you and God bless the soon-to-be 51st state, because we've got a plan. We've got a plan to venue shop for another jurisdiction, appease the other side of the aisle, bring DC in as the 51st and 52nd state as a package deal, and we'll do that all while working with our congressional representative to accomplish this.
Okay. So for our last question, James, what else would you like voters to know about you or your vision for DC?
I would like DC voters to know this, that I will make DC one of the safest jurisdictions in the country. Yeah, you've heard it right. I will make DC one of the safest jurisdictions in the country. Kobe King wrote an opinion article, and I agree with him fully. He wrote this 2 days ago, indicating that this failure to quell the violence in our city falls directly at the seat of the mayor and DC Council. They would like you to believe that, 4 more years of the current mayor, will yield you a decrease in crime. How do you know 4 more years won't yield you a 30-year high of crime? I implore every voter out there to use common sense when you're thinking about who you're voting for. In addition to that, I would like voters to know that the council members that have served 6 years respectively each, the at-large member and the Ward 8 member, that's one of my opponents or 2 of my opponents, they both, if they had a plan regarding quelling this violence, you'd already know about it. We have a robust plan to put nearly an additional 700 police officers on the street. We will, and in addition to that, have a robust plan to create a gun unit that will interdict illegal guns coming from Maryland, Virginia, and any other jurisdiction where people would want to do us harm. We will go and work with our federal partners in the ATF to make ghost guns a thing of the past. We will review with our federal and state courts the loitering that happens on our streets. We will deploy a task force to focus, not arresting power, on the people that are loitering on our streets to see if you need a job, see if you're in an overcrowded housing condition, mental behavioral health, addiction, or one of the combinations. And we're going to give them the resources so that they will no longer want to loiter on our streets. So, if these people are saying they want to be elevated to the office of the mayor or continue to stay in the mayor's seat, if they had a plan, you'd already know about it. I'm a former ANC in the Ward 5 part of the city, also a former civil rights lawyer, where I have sued state governments. I've sued municipalities all around the country. I have learned from this how governments work. But in addition, my time as an ANC, I've gotten to see where all the fault lines lie, and our government is not functioning in a proper way in this very city that I live in. So in addition to that, we will ensure that we don't overpolice. We're going to also extend the Marion Barry Summer Youth Program to a year-round program where we pay students a minimum wage, where we also ensure that our rec centers are operating like an international city, emblematic of the nation's capital of the world. Our rec centers will be 24 hours a day, safe passages for not only kids that might run astray or get into problems, but it will also be for single adults that might be experiencing trauma, mental, behavioral health issues, or addiction services. I will move also in my first 100 days in housing to ensure that we change AMI. Nothing right now compels us to use this HUD's formula, that's a regional formula, that artificially inflates what's affordable in DC. That's why everyone's saying we have affordable housing, but I can't afford it. We will change the law, and we will abort HUD's formula, adopt our own localized formula. In addition to that, we will bring and move for rent control for every dwelling place in the district, not those just that were built prior to 1976, which is the way the law is currently written. Further, we will go into the city's own housing stock. Yes, you've heard it right. The city owns its own housing and land. We will create housing, that way affordable housing, but in addition, for a homeless population, we will end this purgatory of transitional shelters where people are raped, beaten, and abused. And we will ensure that they get permanent, long-term supportive housing with mental behavioral health and a robust addiction service that is the envy of the world. I'm asking that you all check my website out at Butler 4DC to learn more about you. And God bless you, and God bless the soon-to-be 51st state.
Well, again, James, we thank you for carving out time to be with us today here on Candidate Conversations at DCTV. Much success to you.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. Michele, stay well.
Joining us today on Candidate Conversations is Robert White, running for the office of Mayor of Washington, D.C. Hello, Robert.
Hello, good to be with you.
Glad you're here. Thanks for carving out time.
Absolutely.
So we'll get started with the first question. As in every other city in the country, the coronavirus closed schools, shut down businesses, and infected and killed thousands of people. What are your plans for addressing the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic?
COVID-19 has been difficult for residents of the District of Columbia, just as it has for the nation. The reality is that these past 2 years have been so hard for us. Myself and my wife, Christy, we're parents of young kids, and we were homeschooling our now 5 and 3-year-olds, but they were much younger when coronavirus started. The isolation that we had, my dad got sick and was hospitalized. It was incredibly scary. But then we also have a lot of fatigue from wearing masks, from the isolation. And what we need to do, the most important thing, is that we get through this pandemic. So there will be kind of turns and twists along the way. We hope that the worst is behind us, but there will be times where we'll have to wear masks again, and hopefully a time very soon where we won't have to wear masks at all. The most important thing is that we are led by the science in how we respond to the coronavirus. As mayor, I will make sure I have the best and brightest minds in my administration, and that I am listening to the public health experts and advising you, the residents of the city, as to how we navigate it. But the other thing that is very important about the coronavirus is that it has shined a spotlight on deep disparities that we have known about for decades, disparities in communities of color. So while we went into the coronavirus pandemic with significant healthcare gaps, significant education gaps, significant housing instability, what we have realized is how sort of fickle the realities of so many residents are. There are so many people who are just this close to going over the edge, and we need to make sure that we are closing these equity gaps. So people want us to come out of the pandemic better than we went in. They want us to make sure that we have affordable housing across our city, and that not so many people in our city are one paycheck away from homelessness. They want to make sure that schools in every single part of our city are strong and educating our young people with the same vigor and standards. Right now, 60% of Black and Brown students are behind grade level. That is a travesty, and it is an urgent matter. When you put on top of that the coronavirus and things that separate young people from their school buildings, we see that gap grow wider and wider. So it becomes so important that even when we're not in the midst of a pandemic, that we pay attention to these equity issues, and that we have a mayor who is bold and who is a problem solver. Because when we're hit by a curveball, we need to make sure everyone in our city is ready. Not everyone in our city was ready. Many people were lucky, like me and my wife, where we could navigate the pandemic, even though it's difficult. But there were so many people in our city who couldn't. And these are the people who have been asking us for decades to pay more attention to their underlying needs. That is what we need to do. We have also seen the impacts of COVID-19 as violence has erupted in our city. Our city has become incredibly unsafe, and the coronavirus and the impacts of it have really raised tensions in our city. So I believe we need a mayor who is able to keep us safe. That means a mayor who understands that police are an important part of our public safety response, but that we need an entire plan, because police alone can't solve the problem. We need to be preventing crime. We need to be responding more efficiently to crime. And we need to be getting more resources to communities and to people who have been impacted by crime. So I would say this about the coronavirus. It didn't reveal anything new about our city. What it did was shine a spotlight on how bad these disparities are and why it is urgent that we fix them. Our city has had the biggest budgets in the history of our city for 7 consecutive years, every year that Mayor Bowser has been mayor, but we have not solved problems. We have spent a lot of money. We have put a lot of money into things, but the people who were struggling before Mayor Bowser took office are still struggling. And this is after getting billions of dollars from the federal government to address the coronavirus. So it is important that we navigate our way through the COVID-19 crisis, but it is important that if something like this ever comes again, we see in the city that is more equitable. That is what I will focus on as mayor.
Great. Now, our next question is related to DC statehood. Do you support DC statehood?
Absolutely, I do.
What do you think would be the most effective next steps towards achieving statehood, and what is your plan for taking those steps?
I have worked on the issue of DC statehood on the front lines. In my early days as a young lawyer, I was legislative counsel to Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton. And among the other issues I worked on were DC statehood. I was on the Senate floor with Congresswoman Norton and many city leaders when we tragically saw our vote to get a vote in the House of Representatives fall because of the gun lobby. But from my work on Capitol Hill on DC statehood and my work as a council member, as the chair twice of the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, what I have learned how to do and learned it is very important to do it is to work with regional leaders. First and foremost, we need more people outside of DC pushing for statehood. As with any major movement, we can't do it by ourselves. So we have to build our allies, and we need a mayor who can build more allies. Now, in addition to building allies, we need a mayor who is going to make sure we are not having scandal after scandal, because every time there is a hearing on DC statehood, the Republicans drag out the most recent scandals in the District of Columbia. So an important step in us achieving statehood is to have a chief executive, a mayor, who puts our city on the highest plane, who has the trust of our residents, but also the trust and confidence of officials and residents outside of the District of Columbia. This is not fair. No other jurisdiction has to prove that they are scandal-free in order to enjoy the full rights of citizenship. It is not fair, but it is our reality. And at the end of the day, we want to be a state. We want every single right that we deserve as American citizens. We pay taxes. We fight and die in every single war. We support our country, but we do not have equal representation. Therefore, we do not have equal citizenship. This is a social justice issue. This is a civil rights issue, and it is one that we must correct, and it is one that we can correct. But it requires a leader who knows how to build a movement, who knows how to make that movement cascade, and who knows that it requires allies and has the ability to build out our allies across the country. That is what I have done for the past 15 years that I've worked in government. I've worked in every branch of government. I've worked for federal and local government. I know how government works. I know how movements succeed. And that is the type of leader we need to cross this line, this finish line on DC statehood. I just want to, before I close on this question, give a huge shout out and thanks to the many advocates who have been moving us forward on DC statehood, the unelected people who have been carrying this banner and pushing this issue, who have been in the halls of Congress fighting relentlessly. I want to say thank you. You all have done the hard work. It is up to us, the elected officials, to just help carry it over the finish line.
Thank you for that. Now, Robert, our last question is, what else would you like voters to know about you or your vision for DC?
What I want voters to know about me and my vision for the District of Columbia is that I'm a problem solver, and this is the time when we need someone who knows how to solve problems. For the past 7 years, Mayor Bowser has spent a lot of money, record-setting budgets that have gone up by about $1.2 billion every single year. But again, the people who were struggling 7.5 years ago are still struggling. The issues with public safety have gotten worse. The gaps in our schools between children of color and their white counterparts has not improved. Parents are unenrolling from our schools. Our population is dwindling faster than the population of any state. So the issue is not that we don't have enough money to spend. The issue is that we have a leadership problem. We have a mayor who is not focused on solving problems because she is distracted entirely by politics and by commitments to developers and her donors. That is not what we need at this moment in DC. This is a time where we have to pay back what we owe to the generations of Washingtonians who have struggled through our worst times and who have seen our coffers balloon, who have seen our population increase, but have not seen the benefit to them. I will keep the trains moving. I will keep our small businesses going. I will keep our economy thriving, but I will also take a strategic approach to make sure we are no longer forgetting about the people who make our city turn. Last week, I introduced a jobs guarantee program that I'm going to roll out in my first term. The majority of people in our city want to work. They can be working in the ways that benefit our communities, that beautify, that replant trees, that repaint our crosswalks, that clear out gutters, and in ways that help our environment as we are in the midst of a climate crisis. This week, I'm rolling out a major expansion of trade and vocational education, and also expanding live-in school opportunities, because we can't keep seeing our young people fall through the cracks. At a certain point, we need a mayor who is not going to throw money at everything, but a mayor who is going to fix problems. I am running to be a mayor with bold and transformational ideas, but I am rooted in the lived experience of myself and my family. While I'm a lawyer by training, I am an exception to my family. I'm a fifth-generation Washingtonian who has watched my family be priced out of the city, struggle with mental health, addiction, incarceration, the homelessness, the things that we are called to address in our city. I will be a mayor who will close the achievement gap in our schools. I will be a mayor who will improve public safety because I have a plan to do it. I will be a mayor who makes the District of Columbia more affordable because I know that it is the everyday people in our city who keep our economy moving and who add the vibrancy that make people want to move here. This is the most pivotal election in our lifetimes. This is a moment where people want us to lean in and solve problems, and this is a moment where we have the money to solve them. The only thing that we need is a mayor who can actually get it done. I'm going to be a problem-solving mayor. I am going to earn and maintain the trust of residents across the city. And together, we are going to do something powerful for our city. So I look forward to working with you as your mayor. I am asking for your vote on June 21st. And together, we're going to make a big difference in our city.
Robert, once again, thank you for carving out time to join us here on Candidate Conversations at DCTV. All the best to you.
Thanks so much for having me.
We thank all the candidates for joining us. The District of Columbia will be holding its primary elections on June 21st, 2022. We'll see you this fall ahead of the general election in November. For DCTV, I'm Michele McCray.